It started with a creak in the floorboards, one I couldn't explain. My name is Evelyn Hart, and until last spring, I had never believed in ghosts, spirits, or anything that couldn't be rationalized by science. But what I experienced in that dilapidated house on Maple Hollow changed everything. I had moved there to escape the noise of the city, hoping to find peace in the countryside. The old Victorian-style house came at a bargain price. It needed repairs, but I couldn't resist its charm. Arched windows, intricate cornices, and that irresistible air of history. The realtor mentioned it had been unoccupied for years, but I thought nothing of it. The first night in the house was uneventful. I unpacked my things, cooked a quick meal, and sat by the fireplace with a glass of wine. The silence was heavy, pressing against my ears like cotton, but I told myself it was peaceful. By the second night, I began noticing oddities. Small things at first, the faint sound of footsteps above me in the attic. I reasoned it could be the house settling or maybe a raccoon that had found its way in. When I climbed up to investigate, flashlight in hand, the attic was empty. Completely empty, aside from the smell of stale wood and dust motes dancing in the beam of my light. Then came the whispers. They started at night, just as I was drifting off to sleep. A low murmur, too quiet to make out words, but unmistakably human. I lay there, frozen, straining my ears to hear. They seemed to come from the walls, as if someone, or something, was just on the other side. By the fourth night, I wasn't sleeping at all. I began to hear faint noises during the day, too. A chair creaking in the kitchen, a soft rustle on the stairs. At one point, I swore I saw a shadow dart past the corner of my eye, but when I turned, there was nothing. One night, I decided to confront it. I turned off every light in the house, sat in the living room with my phone recording, and waited. The clock on the mantel ticked loudly in the silence, the sound echoing in my head like a countdown. Midnight came and went, and just as I was about to convince myself it was all in my imagination, I heard it.
Evelyn.
It was my name. A breathy whisper that seemed to come from all around me. My heart pounded as I shot up from the couch, spinning in circles, trying to pinpoint where it came from. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice shaking. No response, just silence, thick and oppressive. The next day, I called a contractor to inspect the house. I told him I thought there might be some structural issues or maybe rodents in the walls. He spent hours knocking on walls, checking the foundation, and crawling through the attic. When he finally came down, he looked puzzled. "Everything's solid," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "No pests, no leaks. This place is in better shape than I expected." I didn't know whether to feel relieved or more unnerved. Over the next few weeks, the activity escalated. The whispers became louder, more insistent. Sometimes I thought I could make out words, dark, fragmented phrases like, "help me," or "get out." Doors would creak open on their own, and I'd find objects moved from where I left them. One night, as I was brushing my teeth, the bathroom mirror fogged up. At first, I thought it was from the steam, but then I noticed it. Words forming in the condensation, as though an invisible hand was writing them. "Why didn't you help me?" I dropped the toothbrush, my chest tightening with fear. Another night, I woke to the sound of sobbing. It was faint but heart-wrenching, the sound of a child crying. I followed it, my steps hesitant. It led me to the kitchen, where the crying abruptly stopped. I stood there, the room eerily still, when the cupboard doors flew open with a violent bang. I screamed, stumbling backward. One evening, I decided to record the sounds. I set my phone on the nightstand, hit record, and lay in bed, pretending to sleep. The whispers came, faint but persistent. The next morning, I played back the recording. What I heard chilled me to my core. "She doesn't know. Keep watching. Make her leave." My stomach churned. Who didn't I know? What were they watching? And why did they want me to leave? I considered leaving, of course, but something held me back. A morbid curiosity, or maybe just plain stubbornness. This was my home, and I wasn't going to let some thing chase me out. One night, as the whispers reached a crescendo, I snapped. I grabbed a hammer from the toolbox and started smashing at the wall where the voices seemed loudest. The drywall crumbled under my blows, revealing old wooden beams and something else, a cavity. Inside the cavity was a small box, wrapped in a tattered piece of cloth. My hands trembled as I pulled it out. Inside were photographs, black and white images of a family, a man, a woman, and a little girl, all smiling brightly. But in the last photo, the smiles were gone. The man and woman looked gaunt, their eyes hollow. The little girl's face was smudged, as if someone had tried to erase her. There was also a diary, its pages brittle and yellowed with age. It belonged to the woman in the photos, Margaret. Her entries started off normal, describing life in the house, her love for her daughter, Emily, and her husband, Arthur. But as the entries progressed, they became frantic, disjointed. "Arthur is changing," one entry read. "He hears them too, the voices. They told him to do terrible things." Another entry, "Emily is gone. Arthur says she ran away, but I know the truth. I can hear her crying in the walls." The last entry was barely legible. "He's coming for me. If you find this, please, for God's sake, leave." The box slipped from my hands and I stumbled back, my chest heaving. The whispers were louder now, more urgent. I ran from the house that night and checked into a motel. But I couldn't stay away. Something about the house called to me, pulled at me like a magnet. The next day, I returned, determined to uncover the truth. I began tearing down more walls, desperate to find answers. That's when I found the bones. They were small, fragile, hidden in a crawl space behind the kitchen wall. Alongside them was a rusted locket with a picture of the little girl, Emily. My stomach churned and I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. The air grew cold and the whispers surrounded me, deafening now. "Why didn't you help me?" I turned and there she was. A little girl, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes black pits of sorrow. I didn't know," I stammered. "You have to stop him," she whispered. "Stop who?" Before she could answer, the room went dark. A deep, guttural growl filled the air, and I felt a presence, malevolent and overpowering. The shadows in the room coalesced into a towering figure, its eyes burning like embers. "Get out," it hissed. I ran. I didn't stop until I was in my car, speeding away. The police found nothing, no evidence of foul play, no records of the family. I sold the house and moved back to the city. But the whispers followed me. Sometimes in the dead of night, I still hear them. "Why didn't you help me?"